All right, we're live for another stream to talk about hobby-related things we are working on, or just hobby-related things in general that we're interested in. Um, Greg, Eric, nice to have you here tonight.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. I guess this is our second stream of the new year. Is that right?
Mm.
Yeah, that's
Don't
good.
even remember.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
no, it was last week was the first.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to say that I have finally started working on hobby related things again. So I know last chat I still hadn't really done much of anything and I was kind of just trying to plan what I wanted to start on first. Particularly after the holiday season, coming off of essentially spending all my time drawing holiday cards and stuff. It kind of switching from
Yeah.
illustrating stuff to then
Mm-hmm.
pulling out all the stuff for either painting or trimming models, converting models is kind of different.
Nah,
Um,
yeah, and I admit I too have kind of been struggling or not quite gotten back into the swing of doing things. Like I've cleaned up a few models and things and sort of started pulling stuff together to maybe start painting another Dark Angel and such. But it's been kind of slow, and I feel it's always kind of like that coming off the holidays. And then even with just sort of the traditional blog stuff, I spent a
mhm.
little while and wrote a post kind of wrapping up and summarizing all the stuff we had done on the blog last year.
Yeah,
It just went out late last week, and uh spoilers, but if anyone who follows the blog probably kind of knows, we usually at the end of January always have a post kind of pertaining to some of our favorite hobbyists and creators from the previous year. So starting to work on that as well. So, and all of that stuff takes quite a lot of time. So
it
that
does.
will probably continue to delay me a little bit, but I'm still excited to be
Yeah, I mean, I
back and
feel
doing that stuff.
that post in general is one of the more important ones that we do. Because I think in general, as our blog has progressed, I think one of the main goals of it is to kind of reach out to the community and encourage other hobbyists and encourage others to like look out, branch out to find other hobbyists and such. So,
Yeah, no, this is going on to our 10th year. And I was kind of amazed looking back at our previous years and stuff. We had done the kind of yearly recap post every year that the blog has existed. And I
mm,
think all but
Why
the
don't
first.
we, before we get to talk about this excellent little ghost model, why don't we open up that post and touch upon like some of the
Mhm.
things? Like, I think it's interesting. The most popular post that we had was one where we were talking about the F-28 rule set. So I realize we don't care too much about rules, but
hmm.
maybe if we want to rack in the hits, we should start reviewing other games.
Well, this was
Yeah,
also one of the first things we posted in the year too, right?
it was. So it would get more in that sense,
Yeah.
but it still got more than a lot of our
Hey,
other
Dave,
things.
unsupervised darkness, Dave. Nice to have you here tonight.
And same with
And
you,
hey,
Lifeboat.
lifeboat.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a rule set that we kind of went through, and which is pretty neat. Unfortunately, we haven't got like a huge chance to play test it or anything, but we're able to go through it, and it's nice to see that people looked at it and I think got some use out of it. And one of our
Do we
major
have any
complaints,
comments?
I
Did it
don't
have
remember,
comments?
but it was brought up in some Facebook groups I'd seen, and one of our major kind of criticisms of it was just that you couldn't get a PDF version of the book. You had to get print on demand versions. And it seems they maybe took that to heart and actually now have an updated PDF version of the rules available on Wargames Vault. So that's kind of neat. So now if
Yeah.
people were actually interested in it, uh, or potentially interested in it, you could just get a PDF version, and I think that will be more helpful at people seeing it and getting involved.
Do you think we should update the post a little and like indicate that there now is?
Something I could consider. Like I
Because
mentioned it in the end of the year post that it has happened,
yeah,
so that's at least something.
yeah, you're right.
But in addition to this, then the other most popular posts were actually kind of the yearly recap posts. The second most
Wow.
popular being talking about our favorite hobbyists of 2020, and the other one being just what we had done. So, I mean, I guess, again, all of those are like the first posts of the year, so that probably has something to do with it. But it's still nice to see that there's some traffic there and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And admittedly, probably a lot of the content that's somehow displayed there is also on our Instagram account in some fashion or another that gets more traffic, probably. Which, if we
Yeah.
look at our most popular Instagram posts, um, you can see what stuff sort of resonated with people. And interestingly, the amount of likes our top posts got are about double what they had gotten last year.
Hmm. That's
So
pretty good.
last year, our top post was maybe 1,500 ish. Now it's 3,000 or so. So I guess there's some growth, right? I
That's
mean, it's
good.
still not, you know,
It's pretty
that
good.
large,
I'm
but it's still
impressed.
nice. And yeah, so the most popular was actually uh sort of a picture with a few of members of the Church of the Red Athenaeum, two of the new ones you created, as well as two of the older ones from the Pilgrim stuff from 2016. And I feel, that's cool. It's nice to see sort of a little war band there with some
Mm-hmm.
painted models, and it's kind of neat to see that they all still fit together pretty well despite, your improvements at sculpting and painting and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second was actually a more recent thing you had done, Adam, which was creating like a mercenary for Requiem 82. He had
Mm-hmm.
this sort of Instagram sort of conversion challenge in which he asked people to envision and create sort of a mercenary character to go along with one of his characters, sort of an inquisitorish like character. I mean, I don't think they're actually an inquisitor, but
No.
a character that Requiem has been working on over the years and made a bunch of cool eccentric mercenaries, and just ask people to kind of make their own and whatnot. So yeah, Adam, you created this Darby character based on an Age of Sigmar witch hunter, and yeah, it got pretty good responses, and I think turned out really well.
I
And I
think
mean, I
this
guess this
particular
post
post
also
was probably helped by the
Space
Space
Marines.
Marine standing beside her.
Nah, it's true. I'm sure that contributed to some degree. Which, admittedly, that's the Space Marine I'm slowly starting to paint. So
I think
that's
the main
something.
reason that I wanted to we posted this in general was just that I think was it maybe if it I think it was not even 2021 but 2020 I converted a smaller plasma rifle for a Space Marine but never did anything with it.
Yeah, it's true.
So Darby was also the first real model that I used one of the smaller converted plasma rifles I made for like Imperial Guard. So it was like having made Darby, it's like maybe I should actually build a Space Marine to hold that plasma rifle and then just kind of see what it looks like with like side by
Mhm.
side.
Then I guess the third most popular post was actually just your heavy weapons specialist from the Church of the Red Athenaeum, but
Hmm.
like the actual conversion portion without the
Without the
painting where
paint.
you can see all the green stuff work and whatnot. And yeah, it's I feel one of perhaps the coolest church members you've made, or one of the coolest.
Yeah, I
And
think I'm
I
pretty
think
happy with the new ones that I'm working on. Like I think they're certainly I think they're an improvement over the ones that I made years ago. I'm
Mhm.
certainly much more adept at both sculpting and all of that stuff. And I
Mhm.
feel I've gotten closer to achieving kind of what I feel I would like to. I know all of the members from the Pilgrim War Band, like, if they had weapons, I converted them such that they were a lot smaller, but I think I've essentially since then have continued to push that further and further and
Well, so that brings to mind a topic that I have a question for all you about. So you
mhm
might say, like, now that your skills have improved, you are maybe getting closer to realizing maybe the ideas that you have in your head. But you didn't quite say that, but that might be
mhm
a common thing that could be said. But for me, when you picture something in your head, do you have a clear image of it in your head? Like if you said
mhm
like I'm going to think of what my friend Lifeboat looks like, close my eyes and think about it, I don't see an image of Lifeboat. I largely see just black, and I have ideas and remembrances of things about Lifeboat, but I don't have an image in my mind.
yeah, I I sort of feel like I'm kind of along your lines, Greg. I if anything, in terms of like model building and stuff, I don't think I've ever had a thought in my mind like this is what I'm going to make or this is what I want it to look like. If anything, it's just I have ideas of aspects of a model or something, and then as I'm there working and sculpting, I am kind of refining that and making it into
Yeah,
something.
I kind of feel I would sort of similar. With most things like that, I have kind of a nebulous idea of it and some general impressions and things swirling about, but I don't know how much I like fully realize or
Because the whole
conceptualize.
notion, like, I've never, well, I guess I probably have the skill set to do it. I was never really one to sketch out something and, like, now I'm gonna make a model of this. And at the same thing, like, I don't, I don't necessarily say, like, oh, man, this illustration, John Blanche illustration or Carl Kapinski illustration is super cool. I'm going to go out and look and try and piece together the best components that could achieve a similar thing.
Hmm.
Um, if anything, or I think a lot of the stuff that I'm working on, it's more or less finding a model or two that I think has some of like the characteristics or certain aspects that I think are really good, and then I want to tweak them to make something different. So, for like a lot of these new members of the church that I've worked on, I often, or pretty much all of them, they were some of my favorite models that had been released in the past year or so. And I think they kind of were a good starting point to refine and rework and like make something different.
Yeah, and like work it such that they look pretty or not. They look quite different from what they had originally been.
Yeah. And yeah, I feel
So it's a different approach because I feel some probably do a lot of like sketching things that this is what they want to do, then try to make it work on like a piece of
mhm.
paper, a sketchbook type thing. Whereas others might, I know some kind of do almost like visual sketches, just sort of
Yeah.
bashing pieces together. And then when they kind of are happy with the general scheme, then kind of go back in and
Yeah, I mean, I
refine
feel
it.
like
And I
all
feel
of
maybe
those.
you're a little bit more like the second one, but still not quite that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel all of those methods have a lot of merit, and it's kind of just what works for you. I think
Hmm.
I think it would be interesting to spend more time trying to sketch out things and whatnot, but I almost feel like most of the time it's not like I wake up in the morning thinking like, man, I really want, like some idea comes to me like, man, I really need to make a character that like kind of looks like this and has this coat and that, or I don't
Well,
feel
do
I
you
really
think
work
it
like
could
that.
ever be the sense that if you sketch out a thing how you think you want it, you could eventually, as you're working on it, find out that you feel a little bit constrained and limited by that idea?
Potentially, like I don't know if it may be limited in the fact that like maybe I'd start and realize like I don't think I could achieve that, and maybe that would, I don't know how that would make me feel.
Yeah.
I kind of think though the process of doing some sketching and stuff, even if you still then did a similar building process, could still be a good way to focus on like
Yes.
what elements you think are cool and you'd want to focus on trying to do better rather than just like get one model and slowly pick away at improving elements of it.
Though I mean, I guess in some regards for a lot of these members, new members of the church that I made this past year, a lot of it was came down to the notion that like, oh, I want to create like a one-handed like gunfighter, and I want them to have a whole bunch of tiny little pistols, and I want to figure out a way that they can have a bunch of them on their waist and they'd still be able to draw them and all. So like for that, like there was a relatively strong concept. And then the same thing was true with Marcello here that everyone seemed to love. That was also, I want to make a model that finally uses this like larger heavy stubber that I made, and I want to have like a whole bunch of like little details and stuff to kind of show that he could use that weapon even if he was missing a hand, like on the the forward like hand grip on his rifle, there's a little notch cut out where he can rest the stump of his hand on, and then he has like the little sling which he will kind of hold that sling to wrap around his other stump to kind of support. So like there were a lot of like little kind of interesting details and ideas that I kind of knew I
Hmm.
wanted to fit into the model. But
As an aside from that, it might be an interesting post on the blog sometime to take a model like that and show images and discuss particular design choices that people wouldn't see or know about.
yeah, no, I mean that's a good idea. Like I feel we could pretty easily do something like that with Marcello because there's a lot there. Like even just like his feet, like one of his look, if you look pretty closely, one of his feet is significantly smaller than the other, and that's because it's like an augmetic or a replacement, and then his other booted foot was significantly cut down and reshaped to look better. And like I feel a lot of the stuff, like most of the time, even when I often look at miniatures or models, you don't necessarily know what you're going to focus on and what you'll be drawn to. Sometimes like how the model, if it's painted, sometimes that will kind of draw your focus on a particular thing, like their face or something. But it's pretty easy to not necessarily notice little changes and details that have been made that maybe if you spent more time looking at it, you would see that, and like it could really excite you.
But I feel just some of those ideas about the design choices for his stubber and how
Hmm.
his one-handedness, how you incorporated aspects of that in there. Like that's interesting practical details for like the character that like I think are neat and other people would probably think they're neat. It's just based on the pictures and what you talk about, people wouldn't necessarily know that.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel on a lot of the models for all these new models as well, I have like a whole bunch of little pouches specifically sized and designed to hold like magazines for like a pistol. And those are, I feel, distinctly absent on almost all GW models. There are a few Sister of Battle models that have little holsters and stuff that I feel were made for like pistol magazines and stuff. And it's like something, if you look at like more modern equipment, like soldiers and stuff would carry around, you see stuff like that all the time. But you don't really see it on most 40K models. But yeah, so that's an interesting and a kind of a good idea that I think could
It
be
would
kind of
get
a
us
fun
more
post.
posts and it would make you feel good about all the cool details you got in there. Kinda
Yeah, and
inflate
you
that
could all
ego
it
a
could
little.
also you could include stuff in with the about the painting as well.
And if you talk stuff about the firearms you modify, we could get a shameless plug-in for my book. That's right, everybody. I wrote a book with my father about shooting handguns.
Love
Check it
it.
out.
Love it.
Check it out.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I feel like we've belabored about these things long enough. Um, we could move into talking about the cool little model you're painting now, Adam, right?
Yeah, no, I think we should
Well, actually,
soon do
maybe
that.
like maybe last thing. Let's at least go through the top episodes of the podcast. Whereas the rest is just saying stuff we did, which isn't quite as interesting. But it was kind of nice to see that of the episodes of the podcast we have, the most popular was our interview with Anna from Gardens of Hakate.
Mm-hmm.
And it was done right around the time that Dave Taylor's Kickstarter came out, in which she has one of the initial 3 volumes. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was really fun talking with her about her um, creative process and just the things she's working on and whatnot. And it was good to see that other people, like that, and
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of people listened to it via like podcast form and YouTube as well. So that was good.
And the
Then
second was with Lunax 7070, who
yeah,
makes
no,
cool large scale like space marines and such.
Space
And
Marines.
oh man, and then the third one was our thoughts on essentially Warhammer Plus. Oh boy.
That's less exciting.
Oh boy.
but the interesting there would be that I guess, and I wonder if just people like did searches or something
That's
and
probably what
found
it
it or
was.
something
Yeah.
that way. Where, but I don't know.
Yeah. I guess all that sort of shows like the more episodes of the podcast we can record where we're interviewing or talking with other hobbyists, kind of the better.
Yeah, we only were able to record 10 episodes last year, which is a little less than the year prior, but I'm still glad we at least were able to do an episode most months, and hopefully we will continue this year as well. But
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a good year. We recorded a bunch of episodes, a lot of interesting content, talked with a lot of cool people, so yeah, no, it was good. Okay, so I guess yeah, let's transition into talking about I guess mainly what I started working on. And so to kind of kick off the year and feel accomplished, I decided it would be fun to try and paint a model. And in this case, kind of one of the first things that came to mind was painting one of the models that was sculpted by Andrew Rae from Statuesque Miniatures.
which he's had two successful Kickstarters now, creating a bunch of interesting little puppets almost, or
Puppets and ghosts and such. Yeah. And so his most recent Kickstarter that finished in 2021 and sent out the models then too were the Ghosts of Yellowfield House. And I am in the process of painting Deirdre. I might have pronounced that wrong, but that's what I'm sticking with. This one semi creepy little ghost holding a candle, seemingly lacking eyes, but sporting a very full set of teeth.
uh-huh. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. The ghosts are delightful and are like his other Kickstarter, like left at the bottom of the garden models. Wait, is this his second? Actually, now that I think
No,
about it,
this is his
this
third, I
is
think.
third. My goodness. Yes.
It's
Yes.
his third Kickstarter, but the
Yeah,
first two were
two were
from the left at the bottom of the
of the
garden
garden
series,
series,
Hmm.
and those were kind of more like little puppets,
or
dolls, and
discarded
whatnot.
toys.
Yeah, yeah. But all of them, including the more recent, the ghosts, all have a really whimsical and fun design language and style that is very minimalistic with very soft um, angles and edges and such, but they still have very defined details, like when they have those details. So it's not like the details are soft in the sense of uh, bad printing or casting or anything. But I think we had been talking about this before the actual episode here, but it sort of reminds us of the work of Games Workshop sculptor Brian Nelson, and he I think is one of Games Workshop's best sculptors because he has a really good tendency to really hone in on like what are the most important details and elements for the composition and totality of a model, and then sculpts them in a way that emphasizes that and doesn't get overly cluttered in
Hmm.
detail and such, as though like because some models that Games Workshop creates, it's almost like they feel like they need to just cram in as many little details as possible so you know you're getting your money's worth. And then the heavy metal team, which are great painters, but they are forced to like paint every little detail and to really stand out so you can see that wow, look at what you're getting. And at times I feel that can sort of work against the style and force of a model. But these models don't have that at all and are
I
really
would say
defined and focused.
for their simplicity, they all have very much a life to them. They have movement and don't seem static despite the relatively simple nature of them. And in that sense, I might liken them a little bit to the comic art of Mike Mignola. I maybe mispronounced his
I think
last name.
it's Mike
Mignola.
Mignola.
Mignola. He
Yeah,
has
well,
a very unique style that isn't heavy on detail, but there's a lot of life to it. And that reminds me of these little
hmm
creatures here.
yeah, and like most of them also have a pretty strong and interesting silhouette that you can kind of, even from a distance, you can kind of tell what they are. And so I guess I'm in the process of painting the one little ghost here. I'm still have a lot that I need to
Deirdre?
do. Yeah. Um, but another thing that I really like about them, one, they're all cast in like a white metal, and they're cast super well. They have very, very minimal mold lines that are very easy to remove with an X-Acto knife or even just some fine grit sandpaper. So they're super easy to clean up. And
Yeah, and like
then,
I would be inclined to say that a lot of people wouldn't even need to do that or wouldn't be bothered by it at all. But if like you want to and like you can easily kind of sand away to get it just perfect. But they're like it's like the best white metal casting I have seen on a
yeah,
model.
no, they're great. And I like the models, they're all just a single piece. So I think they're very refreshing to paint. Like I feel I'm more used to painting all the different complicated Games Workshop sculpts and stuff where you're always kind of worried like how am I going to paint underneath that detail or whatnot. These are kind of like a very free and open canvas where you have a lot of nice the hoodie crows. I love the hoodie crows.
Yeah, I have the two little hoodie crows on my desk here
I might want to paint
from
one
the
of them
first
next.
from the
Um,
first Kickstarter.
yeah, but they have lots of nice open surfaces that, depending on how much time or effort you want to put into them, like you can really experiment with adding other textures and patterning and stuff to them to kind of add extra detail or kind of life or interest to the models. And so like that, like I really like that about the
Hmm.
models. And it, yeah, as a painter, gives you a lot of room to kind of do whatever you want with them. So this will be the second of his sculpts that I will have actually painted. I think not this past year, but the year before that, I painted one of his little toy robins, and I really enjoyed that as well. And since they are rather small, um, that in itself, they're pretty quick to paint as well. Even if you are spending a lot of time trying to experiment with
Hmm.
textures and other stuff like that, oftentimes the surface area that you have to cover isn't that large, so it's very nice.
Yeah, and without all those details, like it's not like, oh shit, I need to paint four more pouches and this weapon or something like that. Like you can focus on like blocking in the colors and the major portions and then have fun with actually working like improving them and adding texture and other colors and stuff.
Yeah, so he's on his Instagram page. He has a bunch of fun, like newer sculpts that he's made, and he has these like, and they look like these are some of the final figures to his third chapter of Left at the Bottom of the Garden, and there are these like little wolves that I think these are particularly great, and they have very distinct poses that are captured in kind of a really wonderful and simple way.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are also these like little, I don't even know what you'd
Sprites,
call them. These like
sprites,
little,
forest sprites.
yeah, with like the little, almost like a little bag over their head and little like insect wings. Like they're really great. And then I think it's also neat, like he sometimes shows pictures of the different master molds and stuff that he has. And more recently posted a picture of a bunch of the little white metal figures. So like
Which
I
that means if you back his next Kickstarter, he will probably have all of the bottles already cast and ready to send out. So
oh yeah, he's
this isn't one of those Kickstarters where you're paying for something that takes 2 years to send out
yeah, he
what you
says
paid.
in one of his more recent posts that he's aiming to have the Kickstarter launch in either March or April.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really like them. And I feel I should do a better job of trying to paint more of them.
Yeah, like
Um
Top Hat Ghost. Fucking
yeah,
Top Hat
Mr.
Ghost.
Swither, I think his name is.
Yes.
He
Sick.
is so great. I love Top Hat Ghost.
Yeah.
I must admit,
Wither.
I've been reading a bunch of short stories by the horror author Thomas Ligotti, who is somewhat compared to H.P. Lovecraft in sort of style and influences of the horror writing, but is less concerned with like or weird creatures and stuff like Cthulhu and that sort of stuff. There's very little of that sort of thing in his work, and it's more like the horror of just existence and consciousness and dreams and things like that. But a lot of their work, in a lot of his work, he has various like mannequins and puppets and stuff are often a theme that he'll touch back on and such. And some of these little ghosts and some of the other left at the bottom of the garden thing sort of remind me of some of his stories, which I think could add kind of a creepy element to some of these models that already somewhat have, but it's a somewhat otherworldly spectral element that is, I don't know, maybe somewhat unknowable. Like you don't really know where you stand with these things, and are they something from a dream or like,
Are they
uh,
your friends?
yeah, so I don't know. So I think they they're kind of sort of merging together in my consciousness now, which I kind of like and makes me kind of excited that maybe I should actually get some of them out and finally paint them.
Yeah, Eric, you should
I'm
paint
so,
some of them
I'm,
too.
I'm so good at avoiding doing things. I did the little top hat one. I sanded that one down, so I mean, I guess he's ready to paint. Maybe I should just do that before the Dark Angel. If I did, how should he? How do you think I should paint it? Like, what sort of colors do you think would work well for?
Top Hat Ghost, Mr.
Yeah,
Swither.
yeah.
Um, I don't know. Like, I feel for some of these, like you could really almost experiment with trying to paint a lot of the model with an airbrush to
Mm-hmm.
kind of get like a cool, nice, like white transition or something, and then just paint the hat by
That's
yourself.
true.
Um, I
And parts
considered
where
that.
I'm all jammed about using stippling and stuff.
Yeah, I mean that works really
But
well.
I
That's what
is
I've
that
been working on. Like,
have you been using some like dry brushes for stippling for the purple that you've worked on, or has that been
no,
all
I've just used normal brushes for
okay?
this.
Okay. Because I'd considered if I maybe using like a dry brush stippling method to get a very basic element of it, but then glaze it a little bit and then go in with like more finer brush stippling to improve the effect of it.
Yeah, so that could certainly be done. And like that would actually, I think, work really well.
Yeah, no, so I'll
So for
think about
I guess for me, every so often I get the notion like, yeah, maybe I'm gonna use the airbrush to try and get like a nice transition or something. And I do it, and it's like, nah, I don't like this, or like that doesn't look like I don't have the skills to do it. And then I just go and paint over everything. So, but on this one here, like I've just tonight I started kind of painting the hair and kind of adding grays and stuff to kind of give the sensation of different strands of hair.
it.
And I think it's turning out relatively well. I still have more that I want to do with it.
Do you have
And
a sense of what you're gonna do with the like? I guess just gonna say skin. I mean, whether or not
it's
it's
gonna
skin.
be like a pale white, I believe. But there will probably also be maybe some hints of like browns and purples and stuff.
Actually, towards that end, you're not gonna put it on a base, right? It's you're just have it
No.
glue back to a base
No,
for
like I mean,
skinning, right? I
these
mean, I
little
get there is
ghosts, they have a
have a
little
little.
base that you can put them all together, and ideally I will paint all of them, but we'll see. I think for the candle, I almost think I want to paint that like a fluorescent red,
Mm,
but we'll see. I don't. We'll see.
okay.
I'm excited to get a little further on the model.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, so I guess all that being said, if you're interested in kind of like fun, very characterful models to paint, I would certainly spend some time and look into, or if you go to the website Statuesque Miniatures, that's a place where you can buy all of Andrew's sculpts, including all of the little toys and such, and these little ghosts. And give them a follow on Instagram as well.
Mhm.
Because I think there are also a lot of kind of fun and interesting commentary that I'll sometimes post, whether it's in stories or like on different posts on Instagram. Like I've had some pretty funny ones talking about like the heroic scaling of like say
Yeah.
40K miniatures and stuff, and I think often does a very nice job of putting
Mhm.
into words things that maybe you kind of knew were wrong, but you might not necessarily know exactly what was wrong, and you will often like
Mhm.
get right to the point and like, oh yeah, I get it.
Nah, he's really talented.
Here's some maybe like earlier renditions of the little wolves that he's gonna release. But yeah, so certainly very worth looking into.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, do we want to move on? Like, now that we've spent a long time talking about good models, do we want to briefly talk about how Games Workshop has made some bad new Eldar models? We talked
I
a little
think
bit.
we can touch on it a little. I don't think we need to
Go
belabor it
too
too
long.
much.
I mean, we talked at length last week about our disappointment of the new Guardians, primarily due to their awful hips and like torso attachment, leg attachments, and whatnot. And they have since released some additional pictures of the Autarch model. And there was one picture released last week of it with the helmet, and it looks kind of good. But they released additional pictures showing you some of the options. And similar to the Guardians, when you remove the helmet, which kind of hides things and like allows you to sort of not see or visualize the proportions and where things are at, it looks better. But once you have the bare unhelmeted head on the model, it becomes really obvious how like its neck doesn't look right, its waist is so thin, and it has like the broadest shoulders imaginable.
I feel like the thing that looks really wrong to me is the waist and hips. Like all of that down there. It almost looks as if they just forgot that that's a thing. And
To
like you
sculpt
should,
it, yeah,
yeah. But they didn't really forget it because essentially their Eldar sculpts have looked like that for pretty
years.
much forever. But I think some of the older sculpts that look like that, their scaling was pretty different. And
Mm-hmm.
they, some of that I think sort of worked. It kind of worked for what the model was. These newer ones, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it really just looks like they forgot to do some of that center. That you have this really beefy upper torso sort of section with like shoulders verging on too broad, and then you get kind of tiny little legs
The
that
thinnest waist and hips imaginable. It's like the model is all legs and upper body, and then everything in between almost isn't there.
yeah, it just Games Workshop like why are you always like this? They're like too re- uh
Referential.
yeah, and wait, self-reverent, or like they
Oh, yeah, okay.
revere their previous like work too much. Like certainly Jess Goodwin's designs and sculpts are great. They were very sort of innovative and unique, but that's not to say that aspects couldn't be improved, and to like just blindly follow that stuff seems like a missed opportunity.
Well,
And if
particularly when, like, the Howling Banshee, like, Phoenix Lord that they released maybe last year or something, that model doesn't really suffer from any of those problems. Like maybe the pose is a little too cool for school, and some of the streamers and stuff she has are a little weird, but the actual body, like her waist and hips and legs and all of that, like there's substance to it, and it looks much better. And so it's not like it's just like they've chosen not to do all of that.
we've
And
talked about it a bunch, and like the artwork, like some of the cooler codex covers and things, like they just don't look like this. And they look tall, alien skinny, and like otherworldly, whereas these just look like squatty. And
I think for
uh,
these, a lot of our complaints you could kind of ignore if the unhelmeted head was smaller.
it would help a lot.
But that in many regards, the issues would still be there. It's just they'd be less noticeable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really don't like them.
I mean, I guess it's to me, it's apparent the Eldar will never look good.
No, they won't look like what I think they should look like, or what a lot of the artwork
Work
depicts them
portrays,
as.
and that's
Aside from
just.
maybe one or a few models that are kind of more or less just a fluke, or
I mean,
the
there's some
sculptor was
evidence
given
that
more
Mogin
control.
Raw, like the Phoenix Lord, might be getting a model, maybe that will be good. Like the
Yeah, I feel a lot of those character models seems like the sculptors are given more
more leeway.
control over what they do with them. Like for
Hmm.
instance, Abaddon, the Terminator Lord, the Chaos Lord, like he looks very good. He has more believable anatomy and he's in Terminator armor. And then at the same time they released the Chaos Terminators that don't make any sense. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, well, I really don't like that. I don't like these at all.
Nope.
But it's like there's so much
Definitely
going
not.
on that like it's relatively easy to not even realize that there's something very wrong with the hips
The
and
yellow one
waist.
without the helmet, they're I guess it's kind of this is the warp spider aspect warrior version. The fact
Hmm.
that it has like those big shoulder things, like it emphasizes the
Yeah.
massive shoulder stuff. Like it focuses your energy on looking up there and realizing, wow, even that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Well, we can stop this now.
Yeah, let's stop it.
Shut it down.
Yeah, we talked about it enough.
Also, when you scroll down, they have pictures of an earlier sculpt where they have like the
That looks better.
yeah, this looks better. Like they have their body looks longer.
Their arms are sort of thinner too.
Mhm.
It's better.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Swooping Hawk
New
version.
Eldar, not a fan.
Nope. Garbage.
They're not garbage, but like they're I feel a pretty big letdown for like essentially like a redesign of
They're basically just the same as the old things. Like the
mhm.
casting on stuff will be better, but
Yeah. And you
it's
might have a
kind of
little
just
more
the same.
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there's really much else on the
I mean,
community
I guess
side.
the community site did show there is at least some good Eldar stuff coming out, and that's the Aeronautic Imperialis stuff.
Yeah, that's
The
true.
Eldar little ships, like they look good.
That's true.
So if you like Eldar, that's probably the only good Eldar stuff that's going to be released in well ever.
Also, I guess if you like Eldar, what you probably could do is you could 3D print smaller heads.
3D print better Eldar.
Well, yeah, you could do that too. You know, it is pretty striking, like here, when you have both of the models side by side, the one in red and the one in yellow. Um, the one in red, like,
Looks kind of fine. Well,
looks kind of
honestly,
good.
it practically looks like the head wouldn't even fit in that helmet.
Yeah, it kind of does look like that.
Like it would be tight. It would be a tight fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oof. Yeah,
Well,
not great. I don't love it. Don't even like it.
no. I don't know if there's much else on the Warhammer community page, is there?
Not really. Or nothing that I feel the need we should talk about.
Yeah. I mean, there were two new Goblin star players for Blood Bowl revealed.
They were
They're
fine, but
they're
not great.
probably resin, so the one with the
They,
bomb I thought looks kind of good. Although being resin makes it just like, well, why bother?
yeah, I mean, I feel Forge World right now, like, I've not that we really buy much from Forge World anymore, but I think over a year ago we bought some stuff from Forge World, like not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before. We did, and I think in one of our streams we unboxed some of the stuff. And one of the Necromunda models we got was very, very well cast. So some of them can be very good, but others not so much. I think in general they're a lot better than they had been.
Maybe a last thing that we could talk about. Uh, 28 Magazine had a post on Instagram today, a somewhat cryptic post about suggesting perhaps that a new, like the fourth volume of 28 might be coming out soon.
Mm-hmm.
And admittedly, some people thought like, oh, maybe it's coming out in March. Like, no, you heard it here first. It's coming out in a few days.
That's great. Though, mind you, most of that confusion will probably be cleared up because I imagine
Tomorrow.
soon there'll be another
Yeah.
post where it'll be the same thing, but instead of a 3, there'll be a
Be a
2.
I mean, I can let some people in on a secret. Or at least I'm pretty sure we did this same thing for the last volume and did
Mm-hmm.
a similar. It may have not been with the fat face here, but
Yeah.
yeah, well, regardless, by the end of the week,
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Like when one of the comments they said episode 3 question mark. There already been 3 volumes?
they might think that
Oh, of the podcast?
it's the third episode of the podcast
Yeah,
because we
that's
are using
fair.
that as the logo. So that is
That's
legitimate.
fair, yeah. But no, that's not coming out.
Which I mean, not really spoilers because it was said in the last episode of the podcast. But I've pretty much finished reading this collection of Thomas Ligotti stories, which I somewhat have mentioned when we were talking about uh
Andrew's little
the left.
puppets.
Yeah, but and gonna be talking about that hopefully sometime in January or early February, but we'll see how it turns out.
But yeah,
Lots
so
of
I
stuff
guess
to
get
record.
ready, get excited, get ready for the next volume of 28. There are like 200 pages of stuff to read and look at.
Mm-hmm.
It's big. Does anyone
No,
remember how big issue 3 was?
it was similar in length.
Yeah. So
Like
yeah,
yeah,
that's exciting.
it was very comparable.
It's exciting.
Yeah, so maybe I can. The previous volume 3 was about 220 pages. Volume 4 is about a little over 200 pages. So it's pretty comparable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's exciting. And I think relatively shortly we're going to the magazine. It's going to reveal the winners for the female space marine competition as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the volume that's about to come out displays the downtrodden winners and such from that competition. So
Yeah.
lots of cool stuff.
Mm-hmm. Also, how's everyone feeling? Do you think we are ready to
I
call
say
the?
we can call it. 'Cause
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
should
we
go to
can call
bed.
it.
I should too. Well, I guess thanks everybody for joining us on this stream.
Yep.
Um,
Thanks. Nice chatting.
Yeah, stay safe, stay healthy, keep on enjoying the hobby, and check out all of Andrew's fun sculpts. And do yourself a favor, get a few and enjoy painting them.
Yeah.
So yeah, over and out, everybody. Have fun.
Yep. See ya.
Until next time.